Are you a comic book guy?
I was a comic nut when I was a kid. I had 2,000 Marvel comics in Ireland, which is not easy to do.
Wow.
When I was 12, you get, as a Catholic, you get confirmed.
You want those?
Yeah, sure. You get confirmed in Ireland, I mean, I wasn't a practicing Catholic, we weren't, but that's what you do. So for my, you get a bunch of money.
Yeah.
It's like a bar mitzvah or whatever.
Yeah.
They give you money and,
Yeah.
And you have to renounce the devil.
Yeah.
And,
That's the payoff.
Yeah, but I didn't. I remember that. I remember when it came to the bit of renouncing the devil, of just keeping my lips closed. It's just I refused to do that.
You weren't ready to break that up yet?
I didn't know what he was offering. I hadn't seen the whole deal.
He seemed like an interesting guy from all the books you'd read.
Yeah, he must have. Maybe he had something to offer. So I hedged my bets there, but I took the money.
Yeah.
And then you're 12 years old and you've got £100 or £200 or whatever it is, and they say, what do you want? This is your day. What do you want to do? So I wanted to go to Dublin, which is 30 miles away. I grew up in the country. And there was a shop called the Alchemist's Head.
Yeah.
Which was like I don't know what you would call it here, a head shop, but they sold underground comics.
It was one of those caves. If you have a certain type of mind as a child, it's a place that you have to be part of.
Yeah, absolutely.
You from the outside that all the answers are in there.
All the cool stuff is in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they had Robert Crumb comics and all that stuff.
Yeah, I had the same experience in a head shop.
And I loved that stuff when I was 12. And then my friends would borrow it and their mothers would rip it up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because they knew what the devil was.
Yeah, they had done the deal. They were contractually
obligated.
Yeah.
The parents were definitely actively renouncing the devil at every turn. Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I had the same sort of education. There was a head shop, and the Robert Crumb stuff. I don't know that I would have known what sex looked like, or how hippies handled things, or what drugs were about if it weren't for comics.
Yeah. It was certainly in Ireland you needed all the counterculture you could get.
Well, what does that mean? Like in terms of was it actually hard to get that stuff?
Oh, for sure. I mean, the women's magazines, for instance, in Ireland, Cosmopolitan, all the famous ones.
Yeah.
The Irish ones couldn't carry ads for abortion.
I didn't know that they carried ads for abortion.
Well, they did in Britain, like clinics and so on.
Oh, right.
With all kinds of.
So the British,
all kinds of women's health issues, all kinds of.
Okay.
All that stuff, but they couldn't carry those in Ireland.
Right, because you were under the rule.
Well, because it was a theocracy in all but name.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So the church, which has recently collapsed in Ireland, effectively, when I was a kid, there was 90%, 95% of the population went to mass every Sunday. When I was a kid.
How old are you now?
I'm 41.
Really?
Yeah, and now 10% of the population goes. So that's pretty incredible in space of 30 years.
What do you think happened? Was it the pedophilia thing, or
yeah? No, it completely. It was like it was. Do you know what it was most like? I think it was most like the Soviet model, because what happened was that it just was it was unsustainable. The schizophrenic mindset required to prop up the whole show was unsustainable.
Which means that we're really a business and we got to keep the minds of the followers fucked.
Well, you when you have nothing, poor people pray more than rich people.
Sure.
Because rich people have got a ton of shit all around them.
Yeah, how do they accept being poor if they don't pray?
And they're busy. Right, okay. Yeah. So to put up with your lot, you pray.
Right.
And that's what they did. That's what they had. They had nothing. They didn't have enough. And I don't mean material stuff. I mean a life. I mean self-respect and a complex, fulfilling existence around them.
Yeah.
With things to do and people to know and places to go. They didn't have that.
Right.
So they had God.
Yeah. I get it.
To take care of business.
Sure.
And then the organisation that was hawking God in Ireland, the Catholic Church, while they were doing that, were also destroying the lives of the
children
of the country.
So they couldn't. There's no way to.
So that was built in.
Right.
There was corruption, built-in degradation. It was going to collapse.
But it was like the ultimate corruption. It wasn't just some sort of bad land deal.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't get any worse than that. I mean, that's it. That's the end.
That is. There's no next on that list.
No, there isn't. There isn't what could be worse. That's it. It's Armageddon. And it was happening every day, under wraps, really. Yeah. And it was this conspiracy of silence.
But like hardcore, like it was pure politics. They all knew. It was like a boys' club.
Yeah.
They knew. All of them knew.
It's not like people were getting together to have minutes in meetings saying, "Okay, let's abuse children in this county and then move on to that one." But at the same time, the whole system of acceptance and denial and looking away was institutionalized.
Did you have any experience of that firsthand?
I didn't directly, no, but I know lots of people who did.
That you went to school with?
Yeah, people that I grew up with, people that, and then it would come out later, in life, people would say, oh yeah, this happened to me, that sort of incident. I was a loud, brash, a rebellious kind of
You weren't
teenager.
hot to the priest.
No, I was. I used to make a pretty terrible joke about that, but I think the point is I was a loudmouth, so I was trouble, and I think that they would tend to stay away from those kids.
They just beat you guys up.
Well, yeah, they would just get rid of you or, put you away.
Yeah.
But I think what happens, and this is a really tragic subject, but what happens is that they tended to target vulnerable kids.
Right.
So you're talking about kids in orphanages and, care homes of all kinds. This is what went on.
Now, your folks, you could definitely see that there was no way, in the majority of the Catholics, there was no way for them to accommodate or forgive the epidemic of this thing.
It's unforgivable completely.
Right. Because I always wondered about that. I'm not Catholic, though our names are only, if you switch 2 letters, we have the same last name.
Yes.
You're Moran? Is that how you say
That's right, yeah.
And I'm Marin.
Mm-hmm.
For years, when I lived in Boston, people insisted I was of your tribe.
Yeah.
But they knew after a few minutes of talking to me that couldn't possibly be.
Uh-huh.
But you went to Catholic school?
Yeah, well, everybody did. I mean, unless you were born into a Protestant family, or I think there might have been 1 or 2. I don't even know if there was a secular school in Dublin at the time. There must have been something, but no, that was the church were riven into every facet of society, especially education. Because that's what
that's where you get
promotes
it.
Promotes it and keeps it going. So it wasn't some schools were entirely staffed by clergy. Mine wasn't. There were some. But I grew up in this tiny house, and we were.
How many family?
Me and my parents. That's
it.
So, and we were secular. We didn't go to church. Well, we were the only people on our street.
Well, you're clearly secular. There's only 1 kid in the family?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But so we didn't go to church, but everybody else did. Quite literally everybody I knew went to church.
Right.
Except me.
You got off easy.
I did, really. I didn't have to buy into the bullshit. I used to go to friends' houses, to play and have what we would call tea, where you eat about 5 or 6 o'clock.
Sure.
And this thing called the Angelus would come on, okay? So so on your television screen, it would be on the radio and the television simultaneously. You'd get a picture of some, Giotto or some Christian iconography, okay? The Madonna and Child would come up, and you'd hear this, bong, bong, bong for a minute.
Yeah.
And it may be more than a minute.
What are you supposed to be doing?
You're supposed to be on your knees saying the Angelus, which is where you have the rosary beads,
right.
And there's a prayer cycle you're supposed to go through.
Right.
And of course, I didn't know the words.
Is that when you move the beads?
You move the beads, you clack the beads, and everybody's on their knees, and it's really rapid, okay?
Yeah,
I didn't know any of the words. So I would be on my knees with my friends because I was having tea in their house, and I would have to go, let's go surfing now, everybody's looking out, let's go surfing with me.
Not audibly, obviously.
No, but just to be mumbling something.
You needed to pass, and you used the Beach Boys as your ticket to not seeming like a freak. Well, what did your old man do? I mean, what was the business that enabled him to...
He's a carpenter.
A secular carpenter?
Yes.
Huh. Like he did, like houses, or did he build cabinetry?
He
or
made kitchens, he made all kinds of furniture, restores antiques, that
kind
of stuff, yeah.
And how did he have the courage to be secular in such an environment? It was just not his bag? Or?
No, that was exactly it. It was just not his bag. He just made up his own mind. He just wasn't taking it.
So lucky.
Yeah, I feel in retrospect, I do feel very lucky about that. Yeah, that I didn't have to go through the motions of all the horseshit. I mean, you did in school, because the class got taken to...
But you never had the fear of God instilled in you.
No, never. Well, the thing is, I don't want to exaggerate the freedom from that, because it was wraparound, so the fear...
Everywhere, you mean?
Or the trepidation, or whatever you want to call it, or just that. I'll tell you what you do get as a Catholic. I have this, gag in the show about, Twitter. It's not even a joke. It's just true. I think I grew up in a Catholic country. If you're Jewish or Twitter, or Jewish or Catholic, you don't need Twitter because you get internal updates all the time. You're fatter than you were 30 seconds ago. Everybody hates you. You're a piece of shit. Ping. That goes on all the time.
Well, now you get to share it with the world.
yeah. Exactly.
You take that narcissism and push it out into the ether.
And that's all it is.
Of course.
all those digitech platforms are.
Right. It's like it's a type of crack. Depending on how many followers you have, that you can get immediate validation for all of your bullshit.
It's extraordinary. I am constantly amazed the number of quite sensible.
You're not on it.
Bright people. I know. No, I'm not.
Yet.
No, never.
Wait, I've met plenty of never people.
Oh, no. Are you kidding me? I don't have the, returning calls and all that stuff.
That's enough?
Oh, yeah.
But once you get locked into Twitter, man, and you could pull in quite a few followers right out of the gate and be in direct contact with your people.
I don't want followers. I don't want, this is sinister stuff to me. I grew up, like I'm saying, about
You're not
the
ready
church.
to lead,
No,
Dylan?
I'm really not. No. It's terrible. It's,
The world is waiting.
No, the world is not waiting. The world is crazy with leaders and followers. They don't need any more.
Well, you can be like me, be sort of, not a leader, but just a guy that needs a bit of attention every few minutes.
Listen, everybody loves attention, but it's about the quality of attention you're going to get. If you're prepared to sit down and work on something, you sit down, you try and make something good.
Right.
You try and make something that you would want to see or hear.
Right.
And that's what you share.
Right.
You don't share
the I'm fat today, and guess
fat.
what I ate? Here's a picture of it.
Yeah.
What's this thing on my foot?
Yeah, I had a really good bowel movement. All that stuff. Who needs it? Please.
It makes you a human.
You're already human. You're already human. Be a better human. Keep that stuff to yourself. It's like all the stuff that's worth not sharing. What are you? You're in your 40s like me, right?
49.
Okay, so you get older.
Yeah.
And you start collapsing in different zones.
Yeah.
Okay. And I was thinking recently, what happens to you when you get older? People they have this extraordinary romance with their own interior. Like, you'll say to someone, "Are you going to come to the saying, come out drinking or talking or whatever, come to dinner?" And say, I'd love to, but my liver, it won't let me, or, my pancreas wants to stay in and watch a box set of DVDs.
Are you that aware of those particular organs? Are you feeling your liver, Dylan? Because that's a sign of something else.
That's where it's going, though. That's what happens with age, with everybody. There's always something.
Well, that's all you talk about is your shit, or if you're still having sex, or what you ate.
Your biology becomes everything.
Well, yeah, because your world gets that small eventually.
That's right. And I don't want that. I think that's the stuff you got to keep to yourself. If you're bleeding, if you've been shot 3 times, don't mention it to people. It's boring.
Is it boring?
Yeah,
you think that your speculation about the world at large and your effect on it is more interesting than what's going on
just
in
because
your bowels?
one of your major organs has exploded? That's no reason to interrupt the flow of conversation about something nice.
No, I think that might be something specific to because I performed in Ireland, and I distinctly got the feeling. I've only been there a couple times. I think it's a beautiful country, and I do a story about it, in my stage show about being there. But I definitely felt that I was giving too much information about me to an Irish audience. I really got the feeling that they were like, "Why is he telling us this?"
Yeah, there's an American confessional urge, I think.
In general?
Yeah, generally, yeah. Because look at all the talk shows where people are... I mean, you've had these things for decades now where people are saying, I found out I was an alcoholic.
Or a sex addict.
All of these things. I mean, everything. I mean, who isn't an addict? To be alive is to be an addict of one kind or another,
So you're saying that the more Irish disposition is, just shut up. We know.
Yeah, exactly. You're a human being. You're a mess. Let's do something else. Let's stop talking about it. What do you want?
Let's do our best to avoid that.
Well, not avoid it. Just accept it. You're a hot mess, and that's it.
So that does exist. I wasn't making that up in my mind.
Oh no, I think you're onto something there. Definitely, yeah.
The nature of tabloids, I don't know about Ireland, but certainly in the UK is much more predatory, and it seems that here it sort of drives now. Given reality shows and everything else, that it's really the momentum of it is confessional and sort of an exploration of broken personality on all levels.
I sometimes wonder, is if you look at you said, the British press is notoriously vicious.
Right.
And you have your confessional stuff on the reality shows and so on. I sometimes wonder, is that a way for people to deal with the kind of guilt they feel about privilege? The fact that we, in Anglosphere countries, we're all relatively privileged and comfortable. I would say relatively. There's lots of poverty and crime and all the rest of it. But you're not, dodging bombs most of the time.
Right. And you're not really thinking about that either.
No, you're not. But I think maybe at some deeper level you are. That's why people have this. They see the rest of the world having a much harder time, so they have this urge to sort of. They want to abase themselves because they can't deal with their own freedom and privilege.
Yeah.
So they say, I'm terrible. I'm a terrible person. I have mushrooms growing underneath my parts.
Right.
And
a cafe just blew up in my mind.
Yes, something. My whole frontal cortex fell away because it's out of disgust with the rest of me.
An interior terrorist that's destroying me from the inside.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that might be true, but Ireland has a history of tension. Did you miss that?
What are you trying to say?
I'm saying that there's problems there.
Yes, of course.
but they seem better now. But was that something that you have in your memory as a person in a real way?
Sure, that's what I grew up with. That was the Daily News. So and so was shot. They're dead.
Was that further north from where you were?
Yes, that's the north of the country. Yeah, and that was a daily fact of life growing up, and people were murdering each other.
And how did your family sort of school you through that?
It's very depressing, It's because that's in the air as well, and that was parallel with all the church noise.
Well, because you had somebody actually on some level, and I'm not going to claim to know anything about it on some level, but they were representing a Catholic element. Right? I mean, the issue was, get Britain, get the Protestants out.
Yeah, but it really comes down to nationalism. I mean,
right, of course.
And then finally it comes down to, in the end, it comes down to gangsterism. It becomes a turf war more than anything.
Uh-huh.
And the original, this connection to the past and to heritage and to history and to identity is evident, in the streets of Belfast. We see graffiti that says "Remember 1680," whatever. Would you think? What are you talking about? You're alive now. Your children are alive now. What are you talking about?
1680.
Yeah, that kind of thing. You do see that sort of stuff, or ancient historical battles. What are you talking about? Look at what's happening to you and your kids. I lived in Belfast for a year. I knew people who. Well, I was there for a time. I was in Northern Ireland for a couple of years, and I knew people who had been in buildings where somebody came in and sprayed the place, with an automatic. Yeah, wearing balaclavas and all that.
Because somebody was living there that they didn't want to live there.
Because they weren't paying extortion money from that business or whatever it was, that kind of thing. And in the end, it comes down to a decision. What's more important? What happened to your grandfather, or what's going to happen to your kids?
Or your grandfather, or some way down the line part of your lineage.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's one thing that I don't think Americans can really identify with, is that you go to Ireland and there's fucking history there that goes back to just.
Well, hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. There are walls that are standing that have outlived many of our structures here.
Sure. But the Americans, when I was a kid, had a very romantic idea of what organizations like the IRA were doing. So you had NORAID, the American sponsors of those organizations. Because the people are not there. They're not seeing the daily reality of what people are enduring.
I think it comes from the same place that you were just talking about. Our confessional narcissism comes from, is that there's a guilt of detachment from their roots, or like American Irish people.
Yeah.
That you get this sort of like, I don't even know those people, but they're us.
Oh, there's lots of them.
Yeah, so it's fun to let's help out.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Americans have because America's this amazing mosaic of identities and cultures. It has a lot of the people here have a big pull towards anchoring themselves in whatever their original heritage was. So you'll get American people who, in Ireland for the first time, will say, "Hi, my grandmother was an O'Shaughnessy," and all that stuff. And you get a lot of that, So I was thinking of when I'm here of saying, "Hello, it's great to be back in the old country. My grandfather was a Wolfowitz," because...
But you've experienced that yourself? People who go Moran or will come up to you with the same last name and want to sit there and compare shields?
An Irish name, yeah. And they talk about it in a very, very romantic way. It's about, they don't understand it. But it's theirs. It belongs to them, but they don't know what it is.
Sure.
So they want to participate in it. It's understandable.
They want to know where they came from.
But of course, when you're looking at them and talking to them, what you're seeing is an American.
Yeah.
And nothing but.
Right. But you seem like, I've watched some of your material and stuff, not just with American, but in general, your mind seems to say, like, fuck that noise. We're here now. You don't pay much heed to. You're not fascinated in any way by the legacy.
I don't have any romance about nationalism because look, what is it? It's a piece of ground that you happen to be on. You were born on, and other people were born on. You've got neighbours. Get on with them,
Yeah.
And try and find out something interesting together instead of saying that the ground underneath your feet belongs to you more than the other person.
Right. But you don't. You've never, like, just out of curiosity, traced your family tree back.
Oh God, no. That would just be bad news anyway. Just arsonists on one side, murderers on the other, probably. Yeah.
And when did you start to do the comedy? What compelled you to do that? It seems like. I'm just assuming that your parents seemed like they might be relatively supportive early on.
They were great, and they just said, look, if you can do anything that makes any money, whatever it is, tell us about it. What is it? How do you do that? What are you dancing for money? Can we come? Yeah, absolutely. Because there was nothing doing when I was, when you're around that age, when you might start, 18, 19, when you get interested in this stuff. I had no qualifications.
Does anybody?
No, but I had no qualifications for anything. I wouldn't have been allowed to plant beans, and I couldn't do anything at all. I went to a club. I saw some people do it. I couldn't believe how good they were.
Who were they?
Ardal O'Hanlon was one. He's well known. He was in Father Ted. He's a terrific stand-up. And Barry Murphy, who's an old friend of mine, was another, and is again a wonderful comedian. And Kevin Gildee was another. But they were just so good. I thought it would be some terrible substandard student review, and these people were wonderful, really wonderful. You folded like a hinge laughing. They were just great.
Yeah, I would see, like, it's weird. It's almost as difficult. Obviously if I put more effort into it, but it was almost as difficult for you to get Marvel Comics where you were, for us to get, stand-up, international stand-up in any way.
Sure.
So, like, I always feel a little at odds or a little, at a loss. When I was in London, I interviewed Stuart Lee, and I was basically demanding a history of modern English stand-up from him.
Well, the one in Ireland came from, it was a mix of stand-up. The form that everybody knows is an entirely American form. It's as American as jazz,
Right.
But what fed the Irish tradition, the little tributaries running into that were big tradition of Irish storytelling.
Absolutely. You still see it.
Yeah, it's still there. It's still in the way people do their stand-up.
I know Tommy Tiernan. I watch your stuff.
Yeah.
You're definitely long-form guys.
Yeah. It's not a guy in a shiny suit
right,
flipping out zingers,
Right.
But so there was a mix of that, and then what was going on in what was called the alternative comedy scene. Stuart would have talked about that
right.
in London, which was politicised because of the Thatcher years and all that stuff. And then, whatever else we could steal from Americans in terms of how you do it.
Well, it's funny. What's happening now is that, I went to Kilkenny probably the second year they did the festival. And, they were really showcasing a lot of Americans because that's who did stand-up.
Yeah.
But now it's sort of shifted. There's such a healthy and vibrant scene everywhere that, there are definitely, like, you're one, there are definitely a lot of Irish stars, there's a lot of English stars, and, the Americans are just, sort of there now. They're not, they're not there.
It's leveled out a lot more,
Yeah.
I did gigs earlier in the year in Russia and Eastern Europe, Kiev and Latvia and so on, and, people are crazy for it. They can't get enough. They really want to go.
Really?
Yeah. Because the world's opened up.
Yeah.
And the guys I was there with, the two Russian guys, Anton and Igor, fantastic people, really smart.
Do English? Are they speaking in English?
Both of them speak English.
Do they do stand-up in English?
No, they do it in Russian, but they can do some stuff in English, and they're going to come to Edinburgh. I'm going to help them out when they're over there and, look after them.
That's fascinating to me because, we're so insulated here on some level. And I'm obviously not speaking for all Americans, but when you live in Europe, part of your tour is just to go. I mean, the other country is just right over there.
That's right.
And you go there.
Yeah.
It's part of a tour. Here, we go to, wherever, North Carolina.
Nebraska.
And that's a little, that's nerve-wracking in its
edgy.
own way.
Yeah.
Right. But it's just different to us, but it's not really that different. But you're going to places where they don't really have a complete handle on the language necessarily.
Absolutely. But the thing is, America's so endless. It's so diverse.
Yeah.
Thematically, culturally. I mean,
Sure,
from one
sure.
end of the country to the other, it's like its own planet,
Sure.
So that in part explains why Americans probably don't travel as much as other nations, because you can travel so much within your own country and experience such variety.
I'd like to think that, but I think for me it's sort of like, I don't know, we got to fly there, and do they use the same plug?
Yeah, I know.
mean,
but that's the same for everybody. That's not just Americans,
okay. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, obviously it's great when anybody's curious about the world and they,
Right.
and they go. But it does feel, Europe does feel less other. The eastern side of it is less other than it was, certainly.
And when you, because I watched some of your earlier stuff, and the one thing that was striking to me, and just because I deal with it myself, is that there was a time when you do short form sets. It looked like when you were starting
That's
out,
how you learn, yeah.
right? That you were doing bits and you were building your personality.
Yeah.
But, then you started doing these, 3 or 4, big pieces and themed shows and storytelling shows. But there's clearly, have you found yourself looking back at your old stuff and seeing that you've grown up around certain things?
What do you mean grown up around certain
That
things?
your opinions have either evolved or changed
Well, when
completely?
you're starting out doing 20-minute sets, you're just trying to survive on stage.
Right.
You're just trying to get the laughs and can I do this?
Right.
You're establishing that when you're a young performer. And then once you've established that, it loosens you up to just talk.
Right.
Which is
Right, and the more you talk, like I think you might be like me in the sense that you're kind of adding to conversations that you have ongoing.
It's an ongoing
Right,
conversation.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
But I definitely noticed the tone, on the first big special. You were a little more angry. You're a little more, you're sort of championing things that a younger man would champion.
Yeah, sure.
And then all of a sudden you survive all those things.
Yeah.
And now you're older and you have your own kids, right?
Well, I think you get more doubtful and modest.
Right, because you realize it's not easy for anybody and we're all going to be humbled.
Exactly, and you are you're mid humbling,
Yeah.
and it's an ongoing. There's always some part of you that's been taken away or that's
Yeah.
broken or doesn't work anymore.
You just watch your pride get shattered
Exactly,
over a couple of decades.
and you learn to detach from pride. Who needs pride? That's a young man's game.
It sure is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because that thing can take you for a fucking ride, man.
Absolutely, yeah. And you see a lot of people who haven't learned that, and
It's rough, dude.
it's very rough for them. I think they keep on not learning that, and
It just turns into this weird, bitter.
yeah,
They have no idea that everyone's like, oh, he's still at it.
yeah, you're pointing a finger at a mountain and shouting at it. It's not going to work out for you,
It's very strange in this business that you see that so often. I don't think because there's such a difference between, people who make the break whenever, who transcend and continue to grow in this game.
Yeah.
And then there's the people that are just shouting at that mountain, and there's nothing you can do.
No.
Because you realize that if you take that whatever they're shouting at that mountain, if you take that away from them, you don't know.
They won't have anything. There's nothing left. Yeah.
Yeah.
If the mountain suddenly said, "You know what? I agree with you," they'd have nothing to say.
It'd be over.
Yeah.
So, where did it start? When did you at what point did you say, "Fuck it, I'm going to do this"? I mean, how old were you?
Oh, I
Where'd you-
think I was 19 or 20 because I literally had no other option at the time in terms of, it was the first paid work I'd ever had. I got £5 for performing for 5 minutes, and then, I thought, well, this is the best economic model I've found.
Yeah.
Just in terms of to buy time to think about what the hell am I going to do.
I can talk and get money.
I can talk and get money, and I was writing and drawing. That's what I did, forever.
Were you at some sort of juncture where you were like, your life wasn't going to go well?
Well, I just thought I'm not interested in doing anything except reading, writing, and drawing. I hadn't done any acting at that stage. I hadn't thought about it, and then a couple of years later, somebody asked me to do something. I said, sure. I turned up, and
you did all right with it.
I did okay with it, and then other things happened. But I didn't. I just knew the only thing I knew was that if I went to get a job, I would die. Yeah. And I mean that.
If not literally, metaphorically.
No, literally and metaphorically and every which way.
You would just show up for work.
I would reject myself and die.
Were there any jobs?
No. I mean, I once, I would even destroy it as I was asking for the job. I would say, can I have this job thing? And they would know I didn't want it, so it never happened.
Yeah. Well, so you lucked out. But I mean, when you started, where did you go? You say you grew up in a rural area. I mean, what does that mean, really? Are you talking cows? Were there farms
I knew cows.
around? You knew
I
cows.
was on first name terms with many cows.
Well, you walked by them?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
We had, we understood each other. And then it was a mile from the town. It wasn't, it wasn't like I was in the Appalachian Mountains. And then when you're a young person in Ireland, you want to be in a city, so you hang out in Dublin, and that's where I did comedy. There's only one or two clubs, so you play them both as often as you can, and then you realise I have to go to London, which is a very widespread Irish experience. I have to go to London now. It's the London time.
And does that take any sort of like biting your lip or sucking it up somehow? Or
definitely, because I was a hick, so London's a great city, and everything's big and noisy, and there's a lot of people, and you really get a sense of your own infinitesimal smallness and irrelevance. And you're trying to just make a living, and be allowed to try to make a living. First of all, you go do free spots in all the clubs, and then they ask you back if you make them. The great thing about comedy is that you always know if it's working or not, because the room is shaking. Yeah. And if it's not shaking, you're in the wrong place. Go down the street.
Yeah.
Maybe you should be a sous chef.
Yeah.
But leave us alone here, will you?
Right.
And it worked out,
But you had a sort of like a fairly healthy cynicism and slight chip on your shoulder from the beginning, right?
Well, I think I was a chip. I think I probably could have had a chip on my shoulder, but because I was terrified. That's the truth. I was a young 21-year-old guy. I was talking to rooms full of drunk people, drunk Londoners.
Yeah.
It
scares me.
It is. I mean, and it was midnight, and it was Friday, and they'd come from work, and they'd go to the pub, and they'd tank up on beer, and then they go out and they want to be made to laugh.
So it's a mess.
It's a mess, and it teaches you a lot about not losing what they call losing your bottle, losing your courage. You've got to hold on to that and just steam through it. So I did that for 4 years. And there's 100 clubs in London, so it's a fantastic arena playground to learn your stuff.
Did you guys all hang out? Was there?
We would talk. Yeah.
Was there an Irish contingent and an English?
Well, there was
contingent?
a really good club where everybody went to try new material. So all the comics went there.
Right.
The Meccano Club, it was called. It was on a Monday night, and that was where, we would all go and take stock of one another and think who had something interesting, who looked like they were
doing something.
Yeah, they were going to do something. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was really great. Actually, there was it was a workshop in public. Although I'm a bit scared of using that word, but it was, you try it out, you're jamming.
Yeah, sure, no, I get it, yeah.
And that was great.
And was there like a dark time? I mean, I now see like I got Belfast sitting in my head. Was there a time where you were like, oh, fuck, it's over?
Well, God, just doing gig after gig and thinking, where's this going? What am I doing?
And what would that look like as a performer from that part of the world where, these situations? I mean, what were the situations that you walked into? Because like here, you got one-nighters, you've got, pub gigs, you got, but I mean, what was the sort of, the learning curve, what did you have to go through? Where did you have to drive to?
Well, what you would do is you would get sorry about all the coughing. You would get in a...
You want water?
Water would be good, but I don't want to do it. Is it easy to stop this and start again?
I'll just run in and get it. the water.
What will I do? Will I hold the fort? Do I talk for
Sure,
both of
why
us?
don't you
Will I
talk
ask
to
myself
yourself or do the
questions?
Beach Boys?
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mark. So I'm sitting here by myself now in Mark's den, and he's got a lot of very, very immature literature around. There's a lot of it's very heavy on comic books and little dolls and things. Oh, nothing. I was just saying nothing. Here we go. So. You were in country environments, you were in cities, you not just do London, you travel up and down the length of Britain with a carload of comics.
Right.
So
we do that here. Yeah.
Split the petrol money and
Sure.
all that stuff and drive back, or you couldn't have anything really to be too attached to because your life was in a bag.
Yeah.
And this is anybody's on the road,
Sure.
that's their experience. So after a couple of years of that, you're getting people giving you a bundle of cash, and you've drunk too many beers in some terrible town, and you're thinking, what is this? What's this? What's the end point of this? Because you're self-employed and because it's all up to you, you think, okay, what's the way out of this? I've gotten into this, now how do I get out?
Right. To the next level at least.
Yeah, or next level, or whatever it is, or to be just not doing this stuff all the time. And then, my agent, who's a really good friend of mine, said, "Look, write a television program." So I started working on Black Books, and then that was it.
Yeah, I watched some of that. It's very funny.
Well, thank you.
and I think that's one thing that there is a sort of, my belief is that if you're good in Ireland or in the UK and you stand out, that your opportunity to actually get something on television is far better than ours.
I think there's more opportunity for people who want to self-generate their own stuff, whereas here there's more hoops to go through with committees and channels and
a lot of hoops, and there's more channels. It's weird, but I think that there, because the television business there is still sort of indigenous and intimate, that if they can deliver a show by their own creative people, it's great.
It's just a lot smaller,
Right.
So you get a small production company. I worked with a small production company called Big Talk, who are really great. We were a small team making this show.
Yeah, and it's you are a proprietor, a bookstore.
Yeah,
there.
that's the setup.
And the other guy's name is Bailey, right? Bill
Bill
yeah.
Bailey, who's
he's a very funny guy.
He's an amazing comedian.
Yeah.
And musician. He's a terrific person, and he's very, very smart and very, very funny. And Tamsin Gregg, who played Fran, who's a great actor.
And how many shows did you do?
We only did 18, so that was 3 series for us. So the work ethic is not what goes on here, because you make 149 shows per season or whatever it is.
They don't do that there at all.
No,
do they?
are you kidding me? And we had 2-year gaps between the series as well, because it was, I'm tired. Yeah, let's go for a walk.
And the people who watch it and enjoy it,
they can wait. If they liked it, they'll come back. Please. Give me a break.
But there's no shows that run 50 episodes in general?
No, even for the long running ones, that sounds too much. They do a series of 6, 8 episodes, that kind of thing. Peep Show is a good British comedy. I think they're in their 7th series, but even they're doing 6 or 8 episodes at a time.
And that changed the game for you?
Well, it meant that I could tour.
And people knew who you were.
Yeah. And it
was a good showcase for you.
Yeah, but it was great fun to do as well, and you learn a lot, and we laughed a lot of the time, and went crazy as well. It was stressful being in it and writing it and the live audience and all that stuff. And it was a small hit. Right. I suppose you would call it.
But your personality was represented so well. So now when people went out to see you, you were kind of that guy, give or take.
To a degree, it was a character. If I lived like he does, I would have been dead years ago. But
the sense of humor was there.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And now all of a sudden, when that changed everything, where you're not driving to rural areas to perform for 12 people at some sort of hall, but hundreds of people are coming out to see.
Yeah, you could do a show. You could do a theater, and 400, 500, 600, 800, then upwards from there. People came along, and you're playing. And then you're doing a tour in Europe and down the country, and that's different. That is different because that feels like, well, then you've had to write your show over however long it took you, and you want to look after it. It's yours. It's not just survival. Mm-hmm. You want to do a good show, and there people are came to see that show, so you want to do it. You want to perform it, and
each of those shows, like, I mean, that's another thing that we don't really do here in the same way. That I think that there's sort of like the Edinburgh model is that, you know, you do an hour, it's got a through line, or at least a title that suggests that.
Yeah, mine really didn't have a through line, but you're right, a lot of them do.
And that, you know, you're basically every year you're building a new hour that has a title that implies that it's a piece of theater.
Yeah.
And that's how it works.
It does straddle that theater line more than the American stand-up.
And when you build your shows, I mean, do you do it in chunks? Do you go out? Do you still workshop in small clubs, or do you just write it?
For years I didn't actually. I would just sit and write, and then go out and do it. And
tweak it as each day went.
What it meant was it was now I do try out little parts here and there. I do smaller gigs just to say the thing out loud as much as anything, just to learn it.
To learn it and also get the timing right and to see if that beat works.
Yeah, because I would go out and I wouldn't have said any of it, and I would have 90 minutes of material or 70 minutes of material.
Right.
And it was a mess because I would go, wait a minute, this thing is over here. I have to stick this wire in, and that sort of became part of the show as well. And it was handy for me because it meant I never had to. I hate doing the same thing in the same order I can't do that.
I know, it drives me nuts. What is that? Why is that?
Oh, I don't do it because what happens is if you go on and you can't do that, or you don't want to do that, and you don't know it all anyway, you don't have to do it. Because you forget bits, and then you can start something and say, oh no, forget about the dog, because this I have to tell you about, you know, my colon or whatever it is.
You found another thing.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're...
See, I work like that too, where you just sort of, you've got your framework, you've got your pieces, and then, like, you know, you get tired of doing them in sequence, and you're like, fuck it, and then you're cornered on stage to have that a moment.
And that was the fun. Right. Because, you know, I did dry a couple of times. There would be times when there was nothing. The cursor was just sliding across the screen. There was nothing there. It was just arctic nothingness.
Yeah.
And I'd look at people and say, so, you know, I don't know what I'm doing. And then, you know, something would come.
Right.
Something would come.
That's the fucking best, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you can't know all the time.
But the best thing is, like, sadly, like, some of the best moments are moments that you know will never happen again, because you're not going to be able to find it again.
No.
You didn't record it, and that was it.
Yeah, but that's...
And then years later, someone will come up to you and go, you know that thing when you were going to do the dog thing?
Yeah, I know. That's happened a lot. People said that thing when
you're
talking
like,
about...
I never...
You know it was some shit you were making up to bridge something.
Right, and then you go like, oh, maybe I should try to... I'm never gonna.
Yeah, you can't fake it either, you know, because then
it's gone.
That's when you get the guys going up doing the fake laugh and all that stuff, you know.
Yeah,
and you can't do that.
So, do you get most of the charge of what you do from those moments on stage, where like it's not the performance of the show, but it's those moments where it's like, nah, this
another little door opens.
Yeah,
and you
this
go
is
in
immediate.
There. Yeah, that's great fun.
But
the thing, it's great fun, but you can't do that for a whole show, I would say, either, because you've got to be able to feel like...
the people that do that for a whole show are pretending to do it for a whole show.
Yes, yeah, that's, and some of them are brilliant at it.
Yeah, at pretending to do that for a whole show. Oh yeah, no, absolutely. So, what about the movies? Those just started to come?
Yeah, pretty much. I didn't do a whole lot of knocking on doors because I didn't want to. I might do it now. Because, you know, the great thing about movies is you go in, you do a few days, and then you're out of there.
Yeah.
If you're not the guy who's shooting everybody.
Yeah, and then it's months and months in a trailer.
Yeah, you don't want to.
Yeah. So what was your relationship with Simon Pegg? That just, he knew you or what?
Well, Simon and I were working out of the same office because he was writing his first film. He was writing Shaun of the Dead there when I was doing Black Book. So.
And you were just down the hall, and he was like, I'm going to have that guy down the hall do the part.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, you know, that was the same production office, Big Talk.
Now, what's your relationship with America? I mean, are you, because you're here, you're doing shows at Largo, and you're going to San Francisco this weekend?
Going to the Marines in San Francisco after that.
I know that place, down on the wharf.
Yeah. Great theater.
Yeah. And how do you go over here?
Good. I just did a week in New York. It was great fun. I was in a small theater in St. Mark's Place, and you know, it was full every night. People came, and I'm more willing to sort of do American now, because having done it before, I felt like I I always felt America was very, very different. I don't feel that so much. I think I understand the place a little more because America just is a sort of America's a brand, you know, to us.
Yeah.
It's an idea.
It's a slightly damaged brand.
It's all sorts of things, but it's the empire, you know. It's in 50-foot high letters, America coming towards you, you know, and you can't. You have to just be yourself and communicate. You know, you can't pretend to be American. You can't do it the American way. You just have to.
Did you do that the first time?
No. But I didn't know if what I was doing was going over. I think, you know, and it was.
So we feel the same way.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I think it's quite similar, really.
Yeah.
It's just you sort of you begin to think, well, do these people know what I'm talking about at all? You know, not in terms of, you know, mentioning,
right, not
Mars bars, or
not references,
but just
the tone.
The tone, the way you think. Well, now I realize, you know, America's just a bunch of people, really.
Yeah, well, I imagine you must be learning that all over. I mean, when you come to America now, because of technology, I mean, people who like you are going to find you.
Yeah, that has changed everything. That's one good thing about all this modern tech. It has changed everything. People, you know, it's out there. They'll go and they'll find it.
I mean, I imagine you have people coming out in New York that are black book freaks.
Yeah, people came from Buffalo and Pittsburgh and, you know, all over.
Do you find that you have a lot of Irish people in your audience?
Not so much, actually. I do get some people, but it's not. I always wanted to stay away
from the nostalgia.
I don't know. I always wanted to stay away from doing, you know, Irish clubs or I think something with an Irish hook.
Yeah.
Because I want to talk to everybody. I really am not in this to. I like in London when I was doing the clubs, there would be an Irish night, you know, and I never did that, but I did go along to the Jewish one, and I went along to the black one because I want to talk to people. I don't want to talk to the same
preach to the choir.
Yeah. There's no comfort in that for me.
Well, what do you learn from? I'm curious about this because in your last special, you went to the Baltic countries and you went to Russia and everything else. Now, is your experience that what you're talking about thematically, fundamentally, the experience of everybody?
Yeah, at the base level, it is absolutely. The human condition is the human condition, whether you're in Kazakhstan or Ohio. You know, it really is. All of the major engines of anxiety and hope and love and want are all the same everywhere. There's no question about that. It's just the way people deal with them is differs. You know, some people employ religion, some people use materialism, some people use whatever it is that gets them through it.
But you're very conscious when you're writing material that's what you're speaking to, are those drives.
Yeah, always. Because I think you have to stay close to if you don't stay close to the emotion of something, you lose your way. I do anyway.
It becomes trivial and
yeah,
detached.
it becomes I think you can do it two ways. I thought this yesterday. It's probably completely spurious and shallow and wrong. But I did think, you know, with comedy, a lot of the time you see there's two big approaches. There's going into it, or there's going away from it. And when I say it is the stuff of life itself.
Yeah.
So you can dive into it, or you can spend a lot of time distracting from it.
Sure.
And some people are fantastic at that. I mean, in some ways, Eddie does that. Eddie Izzard does that quite a lot because he does these baroque
dances around
the incredible arabesques of thought and situation and absurdity. You know, whatever, the canteen on the Death Star, whatever it is.
Yeah.
He does these extraordinary structures. A tiny piece of trivia,
right,
and makes it into something much more interesting than the original.
But it's a journey away from.
It's a journey away from.
I
mean, it's very funny. It's extremely funny.
No, I get that. I'm sensitive to that.
But it's not about. It's not particularly trying to put grapple hooks into an emotion or a difficult thing or a feeling that's difficult to.
Well, isn't that really the sort of weird conundrum of being an entertainer versus being some sort of I don't want to say artist, but I find this a lot that, you know, there are people that, like, I'm here to entertain. And then there are people that are here to share their experience and provide something that seems a little deeper than entertainment.
Yeah, well, I don't know how. I think I describe it as I'm here to talk because I don't really know if entertain just means if you're entertaining somebody, what it means is that they're not going away.
Right,
that's all entertainment means to me.
So it's broad. It's not like, let me get you away from all that.
Well, it's just what you're doing is you either want to get them away from something or get them into something. But either way, you're going to entertain them because they're not going anywhere. That's what entertain means, that you're entertaining, the person is still there.
Engaged,
entertained,
yes,
paying attention to whatever nonsense
right.
you're doing.
Right.
So presumably, whatever you're doing, you're entertaining them if they're still there.
Right.
So I think of it as just, I'm here to talk about this stuff. It's really, and you do want the feeling of having a conversation, because
Absolutely.
you're talking in such a way as to anticipate every disagreement, every offshoot, every tangent that might be flying through the imaginary person you're talking to. It might be going through their mind. Because if you stand there and think, okay, I'm going to talk to these 400 people and address everything going through their heads, you're fucked. But what I do is I talk into the dark, pretending I'm talking to one person.
Right. And also, it's not like, okay, I'm going to take you on a trip now. It's sort of like, I have this stuff. This is going on in my heart. This is going on in my mind. I'm struggling, and I have to assume that you are too.
Yes, exactly. That's absolutely right. That's a very good way to put it. That's one of the best descriptions I've heard of it, because that's exactly what you're doing. You're having this conversation where the other person doesn't speak, but you're trying to work it out for both of you.
Right. Right.
And what you are doing is from their silence you're responding to. You'll make a statement and then assume that they will be thinking, yeah, but what about the contrary? And then you take that as well.
Right.
So that's what a conversation is. That's what it means. You turn something around together.
Right. And that's why, when you're a performer like you are, that, these conversations thematically are similar, because you are drawing from these elements of what all people experience. But as you grow, the dialogue changes.
Yeah, well, you're hoping that the other person does disagree with you, or, has a different... They're not just waiting to say, give me the next statement so I can cling to. That's why the whole leader-follower thing seems a bit sinister to me.
But they could be clinging to it just because they're finding out in that moment that they're not alone. And that...
that's a part of it as well, absolutely, yeah.
So how has it changed for you from like younger, kind of like, more aggravated, smoking on stage guy, to a guy that has kids, and to, like, what are the things that you look back on in your earlier monologues where you're like, well, that sort of evolved? I think I was a little off on that one.
Well, what I see when I think when anybody looks back on their younger selves, the only difference for this kind of thing is that you actually have tapes.
Yeah, plenty
of you giving your opinion at length about something.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the time, those opinions weren't real anyway; they were joke opinions. But when I look back, I think it's the same as when anybody looks back. You tend to see, oh God, I was so afraid, and I'm desperately trying to, cover this by swaggering or whatever it is,
right?
Or I wince. I think, oh God, that's so thoughtless. Or you're so callow. It's so fucking dumb.
Just going for effect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's how shocking.
Exactly. The whole idea of shock,
Yeah.
And I find that I can't watch that at all when I see guys do that, where they're strutting and they're laying it down. I'm going to shock you. It's not shocking.
I'll take your God away.
It's so boring.
Well, it is because I had that realization about myself, that I used to think I was angry about things, and then I realized I was just angry, and that anger is all in fear. So the best way to sort of like have an effect is to be provoke. Be not just provocative, but to say, like, huh? What are you going to do with that information? See what I just said?
Yeah. Well, if you're watching somebody, and it tends to be guys, it often is guys. You get the odd woman that does a bit of as well. I suppose Roseanne Barr did that for a bit, in a really interesting kind of way.
Yeah.
For a while, but when you see somebody who's doing the angry guy thing, whether it's an angry young man or an angry middle-aged man, it's not to say that there's nothing there.
Yeah.
I saw Brendan Berry, who runs a comedy festival in Dublin and a great venue, told me to look at this guy he'd had over from New York, Eddie Pepitone.
I love Eddie. Yeah,
and I just laugh so much, that thing where he does, where he says, you don't know how to heckle me, I'll show you how to heckle me.
And he heckles himself.
And the camera stays on the stage, and he's in the audience saying, hey Eddie, how come you don't speak to your sister no more? Yeah. I love that.
He's great. I use him a lot on the live shows. He's a good friend of mine. He's very funny.
Really funny, because that just brings it right down to, there's no pretense of, I know more than you, or I'm the showbiz guy. It's just, you just picture this guy in a vest in his kitchen, this stuff going through his mind, and it's great.
Yeah. Well, it's a difference between, the best you can hope for, I think, as you get older, if you were an angry young man, is that you just become cranky. Mm-hmm. Yeah, cranky is much more palatable than angry.
Yeah, anger's exhausting. To experience, either when somebody else is angry or when you're really angry. It's absolutely exhausting.
When Bill Hicks came to England, did that have an effect on you?
Yeah, well, everybody watched him, Everybody watched him and was interested in what he was doing, because what he had was he would write very contained, sharp pieces about a specific subject that were sometimes quite tricky, particularly like stuff about politics and so on.
Yeah.
And some of them were really, really well done. Mm-hmm. Now, people debate reputations and all that sort of stuff. I'm not a critic. I don't really care.
Yeah.
I just think he had some very good stuff.
Yeah, he had some good jokes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had some very good stuff. I didn't like all of it.
Yeah.
But some of it was great.
But like the way that the myth of Hicks goes is that England was like,
yeah, that does seem to be the way it goes. I mean, he definitely did get. I think he did get an ear there,
sure,
in a way that he hadn't experienced here, and he loved that because it allowed him to do that full show and bring it to a new level. Because when people really have come to see you and they want to hear what you've come up with,
and also to speak harshly about America as an American to sympathetic ears who don't have the same experience as you. Was, I think, a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely, it was a big deal, and it was good to see an intelligent American talk about what they felt was wrong about.
When you were coming up, who were the comics, outside of the people that influenced you originally? I mean, who were the guys where you were like, that is, a good model of what I'd like to be? Or
well,
where
there was never one person,
Yeah.
and a lot of the time for me it was writers. It wasn't comics. That's the truth. I mean, I don't see that.
Which
stand-up.
ones?
Well, a lot of Americans. So Don DeLillo's the person I always.
Did you understand his last book?
Point Amiga.
Yeah.
I didn't think it wasn't my favorite of his books for sure.
No, but I just didn't understand the point.
Well, I don't think a lot of his books. I don't think they're not really an argument based. They're just.
No, but like that one seemed pretty sparse.
It was extremely sparse, but some of his other sparse books I think are very successful. The Body Artist, which is not a particularly. He's deeply funny in a way that what he's wonderful at is making the familiar strange again.
Yeah, I mean, there some of it, like even his early stuff, like Great Jones Street, I loved.
Yeah.
White Noise, I fucking loved. Ratner Star, even like that. I mean, I read the fuck out of him.
Yeah.
And
I'm just imagining,
I need things from books, man.
Calvin Trilling's thing. I read the fuck out of that guy. I loved that.
And like Libra was great, and I tried to get through the Underworld one, but I didn't quite lock in all the way. It was a big thing, but man, that last book, I was like, what the?
Yeah, well, I think that you have to.
I'm willing to let him have it.
Yeah, if you admire someone, you've got to say, well, I couldn't go with you the whole way there.
But with someone like DeLillo, though, the assumption is something like I'm at fault here. Clearly,
No, I don't think that. It's funny when we're talking about trying to have a conversation with somebody with books. If there's a writer who really gets you, it does feel like a conversation because you're going back to it.
Oh hell yeah! I mean, I look at every book as a self-help book. I mean, if it's a novel, I don't know.
I think a lot of the time everybody does.
Who are some of your other guys?
You're looking for answers.
Oh yeah.
Well, just in terms of straight comedy, in fact, talking about that thing of he's obviously a kind of writer who tries to engage with the essence of what human experience is, and then you get a great American master, S.J. Perelman, who did the opposite, who's gone a million miles away from it through language to extraordinarily successful effect, because he remakes the American language, and it's hysterically
funny.
Oh, it's pure funny. When he hits it, my God, that used to just floor me.
Did you go to college or you didn't?
No.
Do you have is there a sort of autodidactic chip on your shoulder?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the case. What happens is if you don't, you tend to think, okay, I'm way behind, so I have to read everything. And you go through that thing of I think I certainly did it as a younger man, dropping references. I know all about that stuff. Don't even think about mentioning that. I'm way ahead of you there, which is really sad. And then you get over that a bit.
It's troublesome when you're a bright guy and you're a smart guy, but you chose not to go to college, or for whatever reason you didn't go, and then you have to be around these people that were sort of spoon-fed that stuff and fight the fight.
Well, so often, I mean, this is what happens. What's very common is that people go through the whole system and they don't read afterwards. They're just, and I feel lucky in a way that I still have. I'm really hungry for.
Yeah, you got any
for reading
lately? Anybody?
Very very recently. The last thing I read that I thought was really great was the. Patrick Melrose series by Edward St. Aubyn, who's written this quintet of novels about a really difficult subject. It's about it's about abuse in part, and it's just completely magnificent. It's a wonderful achievement, and some of it's sort of screamingly funny as well.
Do you speak to that stuff in your act? I don't know all your stuff. I mean, do you speak about the church and that type of stuff?
Yeah, I do. I mean, the thing is with faith, I got a bit annoyed at those, if you like, aggressively secular proselytizers who came out in the last couple of years.
I do too.
Because the thing is, it's if you don't believe, and I don't, it's completely obvious to you. So you're looking at these people, and they are pointing a finger at a mountain because you've got a load of people who do believe for a whole host of reasons, and you might say, well, whatever the reason is, it's just terrifically sad, and you're all wrong, and that may be the case, but you're certainly not going to. You cannot affect change in that through rationality.
And also, like, the question becomes: if that's what's getting someone through the day, and they're not bothering anybody, why is it your duty to try to take their hope away? That becomes a question.
I think on an intellectual level, there's no argument. So why bother having it?
Well, there's that, but then also I got just recently, having because I do a series of bits about how I don't believe in God, but I'm not an atheist. I just don't give a fuck. Mm-hmm. So, but then I got flack from.
You can't even be troubled to be a proper stand-up atheist.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I'm just sort of like, whatever you got to do, just don't involve me. And try not to hurt people. But
that's the belief system. I'm out. Okay, I'm out to lunch.
Never a day goes by where I question it or fight it actively, really. But I got flack from atheists, who were like, we're the victims here.
You weren't committed enough.
Right. But that, like, why deny us a voice when we're obviously the smaller voice? Like, they're playing.
But do you think atheists are the smaller voice in America?
Well, absolutely. They're the smaller voice. Well, they're the smaller voice everywhere because I think that innately, people who once had religion or have religion in their family, by proximity are God apologists. It's not that they're not atheists, but they're just sort of like, let's not. Do we have to bring that up?
The problem with it is that if this is what I think, if you believe, in a God. The word belief means to be held dear. That's what it means. Belief. Okay, that's the two parts of the word. So we all want to be held dear.
Yeah.
And we all hold certain values and hopes very dear to us. Mm-hmm. So the idea of being loved is one you can't do without it.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to be loved.
I fight it, but
well, good luck because that's it. So this idea of being loved by something greater than yourself, is very appealing. And if you are going to say, well, I believe and that's it, what you're doing is you're saying that you know the outcome of the story you're in, and nobody, as far as I'm concerned, can know that. Mm-hmm. So that's the problem. Mm-hmm. I am going to be wary of it because there's a happy outcome, and I don't think things work like that.
Yeah, until we get film footage from heaven.
Yeah, the lobby, people being greeted, getting their cars valeted, all that stuff.
I'm gonna stay in the real world where things are disappointing.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously, because I think that's it's very clearly the case for me, but so I don't understand faith on that level, I don't understand it at all. But what I do understand emotionally is the need to have some comfort.
Yeah. Right.
Wherever it comes from.
Right.
And that's what it provides.
And that's an interesting sort of, bookend to the idea of, the working poor of Ireland, having.
Or anywhere.
Right. In just because I always wondered about that, what effect that abuse had on people who did take comfort in these people that were the spokespeople.
Well, if you look at Catholicism, it was a kind of, in retrospect, it was sort of, it was just the most incredibly pernicious engine of abuse, because what you have is a religion premised on the idea that if you do wrong, you can wipe the slate clean through confession, and that this life is really just a precursor for the life to come, the important one, which is the hereafter.
Right.
So that what happens on this mortal plane is of less consequence So even those crimes are less consequential. That is built into what's being sold.
And that's what they used as a rationalization.
I don't
think
think they said it out loud, but I think that it underpinned the whole system. And also, they were so elevated in society as figures.
And insulated. Completely insulated.
Yeah, they were. They were self-governing. There was no regulation. They were given pretty much a free hand. They had this piety, this air of piety around them from the community, who, it was an aspirational thing for somebody to become a priest in an Irish family for many, many years. And I have to say, as much as I'm respectful of people's faiths, I have the idea of them, it being necessary to them. I respect that for them, even though I don't respect any organized religion or disorganized one. But when it comes to the Catholic Church as an organization, I don't have one scintilla of compassion, understanding, anything. I just think they're the most heinous, corrupt, suppuratingly vile organization that's ever been on the planet.
But I imagine a lot of the people that sort of, dealt with that in terms of having a very active relationship with the church, I don't imagine that it shattered their faith, but I'm sure it challenged their ability to forgive and certainly destroyed the community on some level. You're
talking about carnage, emotional, psychological, spiritual, and physical carnage across a country. They destroyed the lives of people who invested the care of their children to these people. It's unspeakable.
Are you not that you're a spokesperson for what's happening, but I mean, have they made any concessions? Is there any sort of attempt to reinvent anything?
Well, I mean, no, they paid out money.
Right.
They tried to address it through money.
It's just horrible.
It is disgusting at every level.
Before we go, just tell me about Russia a little bit and performing for countries that I mean, is there? Because my nervousness about performing in places, even when I go to Ireland, is that there's going to be that beat or two where you're like, do they get it or do they not get it? Okay, there's a laugh.
Well, what the great thing in Russia, what the great advantage I had, and indeed anybody who would go would have, is that there's this huge level of interest. The people who came, whose English, who are confident enough in their English, are very willing to listen. And they're most extraordinarily generous, giving people as an audience. I came out, the stage was covered in cakes and vodka, and they couldn't have been more up for it.
Yeah.
And it was a great experience. It was a great experience because it felt like why hasn't this happened before? So we can compare notes. And I was really nervous about, am I going to get this all wrong? And then, the very first performance, I did have a moment where I thought, oh God, I've lost the room.
Yeah.
Just for a minute or so. And then it was fine. And then afterwards it was just great. So people would, listen, and then they would laugh, and then they would clap. So it felt like being the Victorian lecturer, a little bit. Yeah. But it was just...
And you learned to pace yourself?
Yeah, you just kind of deal with that. Here we are, is the thing. You're like, clap, and then again. So it was just terrific.
And how old are your kids?
My kids are 10 and 14.
And what effect has that had on your humbling?
Well, it's key, isn't it? I think
I don't know. I don't have any.
Well, it's a major part for anybody who has children. You learn so much, and you get this. They just throw all your bullshit back at you. So it's great. You know where to run. So
you're right. So once you get caught on your bullshit, you're like, he's right.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to.
Right. I'm so short. How can you be that right and that short?
Well, it was great talking to you, man. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks a lot, Mark.